Hey, so welcome everybody. So as you know, Maximo, which is now Manage, one of the components in the application suite, is a collection of many different applications. Now you as a user perhaps have never seen the very long list of modules and applications that make up Maximo, which is now called Manage. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to walk through each of the modules in the context of different areas of management, such as asset management, work management, purchasing, things like that. And so each part that we're going to do here will cover one of those areas. And we're going to look at all the modules and then the applications in each of the modules that are related to those. So, going to be rather lengthy videos. I'll put a lot of bookmarks in there so you can keep track of where you're at. And let's get started. So let's begin with some organization here. So during the series, we're going to cover all of the blue squares, certainly starting with asset management and work management. And then we'll work our way into inventory and purchasing, and then we'll wrap it up with analysis module and the administration module. This particular part we're going to focus on purchasing. So let's begin with the companies and the company's master applications. Think of this as your Rolodex. This is where you can list the companies, their contact information, their addresses, basically their sphere of influence that they have on your organization. They get recorded as a record that can be referenced in contracts and purchase order and purchase requests and things like that. Pretty straightforward, but it's basically a Rolodex that you can use for your vendors. So the RFQ application is a good place to start. This is where you can sketch out your requests for quotations to your vendors. You're able to identify the details about it, any dates that are important, the terms and things like that, and also the RFQ line, specifically what you're looking for quotes for. And then, of course, the vendors that you may send the RFQ out to, the quotations that you got back, any T's and C's and that sort of thing, and then ultimately be able to create a purchase request or a purchase order from one of the quotes that you received. Pretty handy application. Now let's move into purchase requisitions and purchase orders. They're very similar looking records, but they obviously have two very different purposes. A purchase requisition is a record for those items that somebody wishes to purchase. You have the description, the details, and such as you would imagine, but you also have your purchase request lines. That's where the individual items, the things that you're purchasing, are outlined. There's a Ship To, Bill To tab, Terms and Conditions, and there's also a Log tab that is used for keeping track as you process a purchase request or even a purchase order record. Both purchase request and purchase order records have statuses, and that infers an approval process. So very easily and most likely very commonly, you would have an approval process for a purchase request and then ultimately a purchase order. Those statuses can be used in workflows, whether it's using the workflow engine in Manage or whether you're just doing it manually, either way. There are also approval levels that can be set in security groups for different users as well. An approved purchase order is a big deal in Maximo because you're able to receive against the approved purchase order, and we'll see that here in just a moment. Now moving over to the receiving application. Remember the approved POs that I just talked about. So based upon the list of approved POs, you're now waiting for the items to actually show up at the loading dock. Once they do, the receiving process will look at the approved PO, look and see what was on it, and to make sure that those items were actually received. And then you have a receipt that is generated, whether it's a material that you're receiving or in some cases it may actually be a service that you are receiving. As receipts are generated against a purchase order, you're able to see the status of the receipts. And then once all receipts have been completed, all items have been received, then the purchase order can move into the next step. And so our final application in the purchasing module is the invoice application. So if you are tracking your invoices within Manage, then you're able to use this application to do that very thing. So this is where you verify what you ordered versus what you received versus what you're being asked to pay for all match up. So between the purchase order, the receipts, and then of course the invoice that you receive from your vendor, this is where you put that three-way match to work and to ensure that you are only paying for what you have actually received. So the contracts module has a number of applications in it. All are focused on contracts and the different types of contracts. So they're all essentially the same, they just handle a different type of contract. So I'm going to focus on the purchase contracts application here. And so of course you have the different contract lines, what it is you're actually putting on contract, the terms and conditions, as well as some properties of the different contract types as well. Contract records also have statuses, so they can go through an approval process as needed. So the contracts module, again, is just a series of applications all focused on contracts that you can use in a variety of places in your purchasing process. And then, of course, at the bottom you see terms and conditions as well. So our last module in purchasing management is the financial module. The first three applications, currency codes, exchange rates, and chart of accounts, those are the applications that you use to actually set up or define those various things. In particular, the currency codes and the exchange rates is largely just establishing what those are. Chart of accounts is a little more sophisticated in that that's where you define what all the different charge accounts across the enterprise look like. The account structure may be imported or interfaced from an external system or developed manually within Maximo. Chart of accounts is basically who's paying for the different pieces of either maintenance or the items or materials that are purchased or even outside services, that sort of thing. Cost management is a very simple application. All it does is define projects. And a project can be referenced on work orders and other records within Manage. But cost management just simply defines this is a project. Budget monitoring is actually a very sophisticated application. This is where you're able to define a budget for perhaps a particular location or a group of assets or some other type of activity. Then, as work order records are applied against those elements, those assets or locations or whatever it is you're budgeting, those actuals that get entered then go against the budget.